and Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red. Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. Today we're previewing a huge game at the London Stadium as Nottingham Forest travel to London to face West Ham United. And it already feels like one of those matches that neither side can afford to lose. Both teams are struggling for form, both managers are under real pressure, and both sets of supporters are asking the same question: where does the next win come from? I'm Greg Oram, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Richard Spray. With us on the panel, it's Danscape, and over the next hour, we'll cut through the noise, look at the key battles, the tactical calls, and what Forest have to get right if they're going to stop the rot and pick up all 3 points. And just what would defeat mean for either manager? Is Dyche safe for now, regardless of this result? And could this be the final nail in Nuno's coffin if the Reds defeat their former gaffer? Put yourself in the boardroom. Who stays hired and who gets fired?
And Nottingham Forest have sacked head coach Nuno Espirito Santo.
You're fired.
Well, that hasn't taken long, has it? Because Ange Postecoglou has been sacked.
You're fired.
Nottingham Forest have just confirmed the appointment of Sean Dyche as the club's new head coach. We saw him arrive to the train. West Ham have confirmed that head coach Graham Potter has left the
You're
club.
Fired.
Information is that Nuno Espirito Santo is going to be the new West Ham coach.
West Ham will be feeling desperate. A terrible afternoon for the visitors. The final score, Wolves 3, West Ham United 0.
Into McGinn. Oh, the goalkeeper's in no man's land here. And John McGinn makes it pay.
You're fired.
There's Nuno Espirito Santo straight up the tunnel. You wonder what he's going to say to the players in the aftermath. That was a shocking performance.
You're fired.
That is 5 defeats in 6 though for Forest now. Aston Villa 3, Nottingham Forest 1.
Just to cheer us all up at the start of the podcast, just to set the tone, just to make it crystal clear that both teams have had a tumultuous season so far. We talk regularly about the roller coaster that's been Nottingham Forest, but our opponents tomorrow, Richard Spray, certainly have had their own ups and probably more downs than anything. And of course, the common denominator for tomorrow is Nuno Espirito Santo. So we'll talk about him along the way. I'm certain about that. How are you feeling in general going into this one? Give us your general thoughts, Richard.
It's 24 hours out or so, a little over 24 hours out, and I'm already getting butterflies in the stomach and feeling like this is such an enormous match for us. Obviously, that's probably goes without saying. All of us are aware of that. It's just, I feel like we put a squad out there, and they've got some quality players. I think we're aware of that as well. They're a team that's certainly been much maligned, but I think it's going to be one of those matchups where it feels like there's going to be battles, and we're not going to just run away with it. I really hope we do, but I just don't see that happening because obviously Nuno's is coaching for his job, and Dyche certainly wants to get things turned around and find that W again. And yeah, I'm feeling good about what I think we can put out on the pitch and be competitive. And certainly I feel like we can create some issues for them. But at the same time, I'm not super confident that we just go in there and roll through them. Unfortunately, it's just the way things have been unfolding, in recent matches. It doesn't feel like that's on the cards, but we'll see. The XG will tell you, we'll get to that in a second. It's pretty evenly matched. So it's probably one of those 1-1 draw type scenarios. I think Ross in our WhatsApp group said the same thing, and I'm probably leaning in the same direction. But anyway, yeah, I'm feeling good. Pretty good though. Better than I was against coming out of that last match.
Okay, good to have you back with us, Danscape. Happy New Year to you, my friend. Just pick that up, I suppose, really on your general thoughts going into West Ham, and by all means, you can give us your kind of overriding feelings coming out of Aston Villa as well, if you want to chuck some of that into the mix.
Not sure I want to go back there. Happy New Year to everyone. Look, after that Villa game, I was quite despondent almost because of the way that we conceded the goals and the mistakes, and then obviously the way we set up as well. It just kind of feels like so far this season, yes, we've been down the bottom, and yes, you can say at different points whether we're in a relegation battle or not. But we're sort of, as time goes on, we're playing more like we're in a relegation battle, and that was very much like that. Just go there, cling on for dear life, and then a goalkeeper error or whatever, and you lose the game, and it's kind of like that. Just feels so relegation-y. But obviously, the great thing at this time of year is there's always a game within another couple of days, so it is a chance to put a massive gap between us and West Ham. That is literally all that matters at this point in time, is trying to keep them as far away below us as possible. It doesn't look like Burnley can turn things around as much as other teams. Obviously, Wolves got a win, but they're so far behind that that there's too big of a gap. So it literally comes down now for us to feel any kind of comfort is keeping that gap between us and West Ham, and what better way to do it than to obviously beat them. So it kind of, you could say it comes at a good time to try and create some kind of reset, because I think just what worries me on the back of the Villa game is the players look a bit lost and a bit down. Even players that have been in form like Hutchinson just didn't look as confident in that game. Whether that's, some people say it's tiredness, just the games back to back. It just looks like they're feeling the pressure, and somehow you've got to break that cycle, because again, the downside of this time of year is that you don't have any time to go to the training ground and come up with new tactics or anything like that. It just comes down to mentality and moments and confidence. So that's what Dyche has got to work on in the 2 days between these games, is trying to get him in a headspace where they're really focused.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some talk around social media and through the fan base about some of the comments Sean Dyche was making after the Villa game, and was he maybe a little bit unfair in kind of going a little bit in on the players, because he talks about messaging all the time. He talks about processes, talks about game plans, and what we saw in that game at Villa Park really didn't fill us with much joy, because we were so passive. It was ridiculous. And I know I've talked about us sitting in and countering as one of our best weapons, but it was too much, it felt, from my point of view, to watch a Forest team that just didn't lay a glove in any way, shape or form on Villa until we went 2-0 down. And then we started to kind of come into the game a little bit. So I'm hoping that with the game against West Ham coming around so soon, as you touched on, Dan, it perhaps feels like a good time really for this game to be happening, because they're under as much, if not more, pressure than we are. Ian Wigginton is with us in the comments. Good morning to you from a very decidedly white Toronto, a place where snow comes very, very frequently. He's saying, let's see if Nuno can get sacked again in the same season. Well, we'll be talking a little bit about that as we go on. Steph is with us in the comments saying, Happy New Year. I don't even know what to think about this team. Players, managers, Edu, ownership, just at a loss. There is a lot of head scratching going on. And when it comes to this game, Richard, we're thinking about both managers. We're thinking about the fragility of both teams. We've lost our last few league games, as you know. We've lost 4 in a row. We sit just above West Ham. There's a 4-point gap. How much pressure is Sean Dyche really under? And could this fixture define his short-term future at the club?
It feels like it would be, I've used this phrasing, self-sabotage, if we were to go another manager route. And frankly, it goes back to a similar question as to who else would be available for us to actually go out and bring in and would want to take on this kind of project with the same kind of passion and sort of connectivity to the club. I mean, I recognize that that's not everything. I think, Dan, you pointed out very early on, like, that'll only take you so far. And there's certainly been moments where it felt like that was what to a degree was helping to elevate some things and certainly stabilize the dressing room and give people good feeling about where we were headed, but with wins like against, Liverpool and so forth. But I don't know. I don't think he's under immediate pressure. I definitely think it'll escalate very quickly, just a general feeling about him as a manager, and certainly his future prospects as a manager with Forest beyond the season, because we all recognize he hasn't got a preseason. We talked about that in the last match as well, Greg, that he hasn't really had a chance to provide that to his players and for them to have that themselves. And I mean, but it has been a few weeks now, and you'd feel like some things have set in a little bit at this stage. I don't know. I would say he's not under immediate danger for this match, but I mean, if we go 7, 8, 9 matches in a row where we don't win, especially with some matches coming up in the second half where we're playing those lower end teams like Leeds away and we're playing against Burnley, he's got to find a way through it. I know, Dan, you mentioned as well, just he goes through these streaks of losses and you're left kind of wanting as to what he's going to do to switch things up. I think the thing that worries me in terms of the messaging, like you mentioned, Greg, is sometimes it tends to focus in on the players. Do they need to play better? Certainly. But if you look at that match against Everton, did the players decide that they were going to put 52, 53 crosses in? I mean, it felt like that was a tactical decision on his part and some strange substitutions, as we've mentioned. I don't know. It's almost to the point where it's starting to wonder does he feel like he has a plan B? Does it feel like he has a way of making adjustments in game to be able to affect things? To date, with the 4 losses in a row, doesn't seem that way. So yeah, definitely the pressure mounts significantly if he goes on, to 3 or 4 more losses, because we're really putting ourselves in a desperate hole without knowing exactly what West Ham's going to do. And they may get a new manager bounce, as we've all seen in years past when those changes are made. If we do end up winning this game, though, it certainly puts himself in a little bit more stabilized position, because at least we've got another win. We're moving getting further above West Ham, as Dan mentioned. So, but I wouldn't say it's immediate, but I said it's definitely going to get the ball rolling downhill, as it were, a snowball rolling downhill.
Feels to me like back-to-back games, he was tactically lacking. So I'm talking about the home game against Everton, where we just went after them down the flanks all the time and did all those crosses you just referenced. And we didn't try and mix it up and kind of break them down through the middle, intricate passing and so on. We just couldn't. We just kept putting loads of crosses in. And it was just mind-blowing to me that it didn't kind of shake it up at all. And then the very, very next game, it's like the same team playing in a completely different way. I mean, obviously, I know we're away from home and at Villa Park, but it's like chalk and cheese. The proverbial difference was just so noticeable. And it just felt like, well, maybe we should just chuck a few more crosses into the Villa box just to kind of shake it up a little bit. You were doing that last game, and we're not doing anything this game. I can't even remember one cross going into the Villa box. I'm sure there probably were. So I'm at that stage now with where maybe many Forest fans are, where the worry is taking over my judgment a little bit. A lot of fans kind of are snapping out and getting very angry, and I think they were getting very frustrated that Kalimuendo wasn't playing. And I'm not even sure that really was their true thoughts. I think maybe it was manifesting itself that Kalimuendo must play. He surely must be the saviour of all this, because in fact, they were just feeling, and we are just feeling, very nervous and very worried. And therefore, we need to try and channel that worry into something to come up with some kind of solution. Kalimuendo is the solution. He surely must be the solution. When, if he really was, he would have played a lot more minutes than he has done this season. In terms of this game, Dan, how significant is the psychological edge of the reverse fixture where West Ham won 3-0 at the City Ground? And should that history influence how Forest approached this match? I mean, that result got Nuno sacked, and we could literally do the same thing.
True. I'm not sure the result got Nuno sacked. I think he might have been on the way out anyway. That was just the final straw. The players in that particular game, they looked a bit lost, and they weren't really focused on that game. They were there, and they were just getting all the basics wrong. We absolutely dominated them at the City Ground in terms of possession and territory and everything. We just couldn't create anything. And we're sort of still in that same position now, as we saw against Everton and Fulham and some of these other teams, is that if you strip all the context away about the league positions and the manager and all that, we've still got the same challenge in this game. I think they'll sit back even more than we sit back against Villa. And our job will be to break them down. And so the psychological element comes on. Where we've been before is, can somebody on that pitch just step up and do something out of nothing? Or can they have that bit of confidence between 2 or 3 of them to put a move together that unlocks what is a pretty poor defence, a fairly cumbersome defence at West Ham. Again, some players missing from AFCON, and they've got a decent midfield, but they're very reliant on Paqueta being fit. I'm not sure what his situation is. So there's some weaknesses there, but they are going to sit in. They are going to do what Nuno used to do with us. I think that's the biggest change that they've made, is that they're trying to play like Everton played and beat us. They're trying to play like Fulham played and beat us. So the psychology comes down to, can we actually switch that around, as opposed to, even, the clash of management and all the history and the context around it. I think it's all on that. And I suppose for Deitch, it's another test, isn't it? When you talk about his kind of position at the club, it's going to feel horrible if we lose that game. It's going to feel horrible, and there is going to be a massive amount of pressure on him. And that's where the people at the club have to then rise above that. If they think he's doing a good job, if they're talking to the players and the players are saying, look, we get it, we're on board, things are going well. That's what you have to make the decision on at this time of the season. You can't just make it based on one result, because otherwise you're just going to keep changing managers every 3 games, aren't you? So there's got to be some more science to it. But for us as fans, if we don't see just a bit of quality out of the team, then I suppose, it comes down to, again, not just tactics, but like, can he get the players in that place to deliver that? That's the main thing. That's the main thing to judge him on at the minute, because there isn't time to introduce loads of tactical plans and this, that, and the other.
So it might come down to a case of who wants it more, who's more up for it, maybe, because both teams are feeling bruised. I mean, Richard is damn right when it comes to the fact that West Ham might sit in and we've got to kind of go after them to break them down. They're a West Ham side that are going to probably be quite nervous and reactive. Do you think Forest should be more proactive than usual? Or would you think that this perhaps is a game where Forest's discipline is important, their game management and patience matter more than the ambition to get an early goal?
Oh, this is going to probably feel like a very generic answer, which is a great thing to say on the podcast, I'm sure. Balance. I think there needs to be a bit of balance, because you saw a little bit more intent at different moments against Man City. I mean, it's a different team, as we know. I mean, they're not going to play the same way. They're going to be high up the pitch. There's going to be opportunities to get behind them. And so it's a different sort of modus operandi, I guess, against them. But against, Everton, there felt like a lot of empty possession. And I think what we did see was, yes, a lot of defensive play, a lot of sitting in against Villa and so on and so forth. And we know the quality of their players, and we know the kind of form that they're in. So I would say you're going in there with wanting to be careful and wanting to remain compact and, regulate space and do all of that. But I would say you just got to play with a little bit more less fear, because ultimately this is a team that's not highly confident themselves. And yes, their backs against the wall. And maybe it's one of those things. It's like a caged animal trying to get out or something to that effect. But in reality, I think we just have to go in there expecting to dominate them, but at the same time being very, very cautious about how we approach it, because they certainly have the quality on the counter to hurt us. I mean, if someone like Jared Bowen's quality, I mean, he's a guy that can change the game in an instant. I mean, Dan, you've talked about this quite regularly about players like on Villa, like a Morgan Rogers, who can, even when Villa's not playing at the level you anticipate them to play, and they're really not retaining all the possession or not getting all the chances, when those chances come, a player of that ilk can really hurt you quickly and change the momentum of a match. And so seeing what Morgan did in that last match, I feel like we can definitely be a little bit more front foot. We could not put ourselves in a position where we go so ultra defensive that we invite them to sort of control the game. So I think it's critical that from the get-go we put our plan in place in terms of getting our players feeling confident, as Dan mentioned, but also at the same time being a little bit more judicious in terms of how we utilize some of our midfield battles and how we utilize our midfield players to create things. That's why we'll probably talk about maybe a change in midfield in terms of who we deploy from a personnel standpoint, because we want a little bit more creativity and a little bit more dynamism to try to unlock some things, find those lanes, find those channels, find those passing windows to try to exploit. Because as Dan pointed out, the last match, their defensive players were really, really poor. I think Walker Peters was okay, but their central defenders were just absolutely terrible. And so I think there's definitely opportunity for Jesus to create havoc if we are able to feed him the ball in the right areas and be able to exploit it. But I do think sitting back and being ultra defensive, to me, is going to be the last thing you're going to want to do in this match, because it doesn't beg for that, because they're not that good in order to allow for that.
Okay, please do go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button, guys. If you haven't joined in the party already, we'd love you to subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on a podcast somewhere, then a 5-star review would be lovely. We're on social media. We're on X. We're on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok as well. Danscape, Forest's underlying numbers away from home are a bit of a concern. The XG creation drops. They concede higher quality chances, and a disproportionate number of goals arrive in short phases after turnovers. Is that going to be a factor in this game against West Ham, or are they just that bad that the XG and all the other stats in the world don't really come into play?
Both teams are pretty bad if you're looking at the expected goals overall. I mean, most teams are worse away from home than at home. That does ring true for whatever reason. For most teams, and I guess touching on what was said earlier, like West Ham will wait for a mistake, and I think what sometimes when we saw that performance against Villa, like it's fine to sit back and kind of have the two lines of 4 or 5 in midfield as we actually had against Villa. That's fine. But it sort of has to be with a plan of trying to trap the opponent somewhere, that you're directing them to a particular area where you're going to take the ball off them because you know there's a player that's likely to make a mistake, and then you've got 3 or 4 players around them that can quickly move up the pitch together. Because it just looked very flat against Villa, like they were literally in a straight line, and it was kind of like whenever we got the ball, there was no way out, so we just hoofed it long. So there's absolutely no need to play like that against West Ham, that's for sure. So it comes down to moments, right? And if we can actually come up with a plan to trap them into areas, they will make mistakes, because they've shown that against Wolves. They made some really bad mistakes. In particular, Magassa got caught out for a few like 50-50s and out of position. So there's mistakes in them, and I think the underlying numbers show that they're a poor team, like you've touched on, as we sort of have been. But we've had glimpses of being a better team more often than they have, right? They got those couple of results under Nuno early on, but since then they've sort of, maybe they could say they deserve something against Brighton more than they got because it was a couple of penalties and stuff like that. But I think overall it's just going to come down to not getting sucked in too much to the, like what you touched on earlier about, is it about getting the players up for it? Like, yes, it is to a point, but not charging around the pitch so that you suddenly leave a gap, not throw in 10 players forward when we're chasing the game if we happen to go behind, and leaving space for them to suddenly score, on the break. It's got to be about control. It's more about being focused on the game than being like up for it, like super high energy and intensity, I think. And that's where our quality should show through, hopefully.
Tricky Mickey's with us in the comments, says if only Sean Dyche would let the handbrake off, then we'd have a better chance of winning games. Nick wants us to push our midfield up and also create space for our midfield to play. He says our passing has been poor and our movement off the ball non-existent. We are dreadful to watch. Ad says, why wait until after West Ham beat us? Get rid ASAP. He sets up like a League One side. He's such a bad manager with appalling tactics. I can't see how he commands any respect from the players. Ad clearly referencing Sean Dyche there. On the players, Dan and Rich, I think being up for it is important, but certainly controlled. I don't want people running around like headless chickens. I feel this is the game where you absolutely need your key players to really be at their best. So I'm talking about Nico Williams as well, because he's been probably our best player alongside Elliot Anderson. But Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White are the other obvious two names that just have to be the best possible version of themselves. I think Elliot Anderson's been a little bit off it. He certainly was against Aston Villa. Gibbs-White wasn't too bad against Villa in certain phases of play. He got a good goal. Those two for me are absolutely crucial, as is Amari Hutchinson. I mean, obviously I could start naming every single player, and that's not really what I'm trying to do. But, those kind of 4 players that have shown over their Forest careers, whether it's short or long, that they can really affect games at both ends of the pitch. Nico defensively, but certainly going forwards. We know what Amari Hutchinson has done since he's cemented his place in the team, and I want to see more from him in that respect. But really the Elliot Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White combination in midfield and linking up play, for me, has to be crucial if we are going to try and break down a West Ham team that is going to sit in. I don't want us to be going back to this non-stop crossing of balls in. I'm not saying don't cross the ball at all, but what I'm saying is let's mix it up a little bit. We will come on to our team shortly, but those key men stand out for me from a Forest point of view. West Ham will have their own hopes and ideas that they can affect the game from their point of view. So Richard is here to give us the opposition preview. Here we go.
All right. Yeah. So I think as we talked touched on from the beginning, what's on screen right now is looking at where they are at the Premier League table in some recent form just in the last 5 games. So they're, of course, third from the bottom. They're in 18th. Clearly not playing well whatsoever. They've gotten 1 draw the last 5, so they're really struggling just to get points and try to, gain some sort of positive movement up the table. But we're not far behind. We're right above them, clearly. So there's not a whole lot of differentiation there. But if you look at just in general where they're at, they're clearly lacking confidence, lacking the ability to, at this stage, to be able to kind of find some sort of footing to move in. And we hope to take advantage. Screen just went away. All right. But in terms of their overall XG, as we've talked about, in terms of away form, most teams are going to struggle away from home. But them at home, they've actually they've got an XG of 1.1 and they've got an XG against of 1.6. So clearly that's creating a lot of challenges for them to find points at home. They've only won 1, they've drawn 1, and they've lost 7. So when I went back and looked at our home record, it's actually not that much different. I think we've got 1 extra draw in there and 1 less loss. So that's at least something, but it's not significant. So we know that they're at least going to be somewhat fragile at home, which is a good thing for us. Head to head in terms of how we played against them since we've come in the Premier League, West Ham's got 3 wins. So we played them 7 times in so far, in these last few years. Obviously, we've got another one coming up on Tuesday as we're talking about. But the previous 7, they've won 3, 2 at home, 1 away. Their XG has been about 1.5 during those matchups. Forest is at 4 wins. So we've had 4 wins. We've had 3 at home and then 1 away. And so we're at a 1.6 XG. So there's not a significant difference between what our XG looks like. Hence why I was saying this feels like very much a very, if you look at the historicals, it looks very much like we're pretty evenly matched. Just looking at their last 3 fixtures in particular, they're at home against Fulham. That was week 18, week 19 home against Brighton, as Greg just alluded to. They had a draw from that. That's the only point they've gotten in the last 5, as I mentioned. But their XG was actually decent. It was around the 2 mark, and their XG against is around the 3 mark. So they were lucky to get away with that one, I think, and not take a loss on that one. So they're definitely prone to giving up goals, hence their goal difference, which is about -20 at the stage. And then they went away to Wolves, and we all know what happened with that comprehensively from the kickoff. It was just terrible. And so it's one of those situations, but they did dominate possession that match. So they really didn't do anything with it, similar to what we did against Everton. We can go to the next slide, Greg. So looking at their injury situation, I think, Dan referenced the AFCON scenario. They've got Diouf and Wan-Bissaka are both out from with AFCON, so they're clearly not going to be playing in this match. 2 key players to be looking at, especially considering the form of their center backs, which in the last match, as I mentioned earlier, was not good against Wolves. And Wolves obviously lack a lot of intent, a lot of attack as well. I mean, they've got some decent players, but it hasn't manifested to any results until they played West Ham. But Jean-Claire Todibo, he's got a groin/hip/pelvic injury. He was listed at 50%. This is what we was looking at prior to the match that they just played against Wolves. Lewis Paquetá he's got a lower back injury, but both are projected to come back for this match, and those are key for them to do that. Their other goalkeeper, Lucas Fabianski, he's not going to be factoring into this at all. But that pretty much covers their injury situation. So we'll see what happens. It's probably likely that Todibo's going. It'll be kind of 50-50, I think, as to whether Paquetá will play. But my guess is he'll probably play just because of the impact he can have for them. So looking at their lineup, just a projected lineup to our right here, for those who can't see it, it's a 4-2-3-1. You've got Areola in goal, who's pretty much nailed on. You've got Scarles, which is an academy player. He's a young player. He's been playing the last 3 matches at left back, which he kind of plays somewhat like Hinchelwood. He's kind of like left back midfield. He can kind of do that. He's a very defensive minded player. Then you've got Kilman and Todibo and your center backs is what I'm projecting that they'll do. And then Walker Peters on the right, who we're very familiar with. He's got pace. He's got the ability to press forward and get up there and bomb forward and try to create problems for our fullbacks. And that sets up their back line, their defensive area of the pitch. Then you've got Magasa, who's a relatively new player to them. I mean, he's been there this season, but he's not been in the Premier League a significant amount of time. He's kind of been playing in spells with players like Potts, who's another academy player for them. And then I've got Fernandez playing that sort of box-to-box position, which Dan, I know, is very familiar with. Fernandez was someone who we wanted to bring in at Forest, right? So now Nuno got his wish and brought him in over at West Ham. But then Paquetá, the 10, Somerville on your left in the left wing position, Bowen on your right, and his normal position, and Callum Wilson playing up top. It's not too dissimilar with some minor changes, because I don't think Nuno's the kind of guy who just wholesale changes to try to create something. Maybe he will for this match. Maybe a Souček might come in, who's been a problem for us, especially on set pieces, coming from that deeper midfield area. But as it stands right now, as an overall team, they're about 6.58 overall SofaScore rating. But you can see on the screen right here, there's some players like obviously Mateus Fernandes, Jared Bowen, both in that greater than 7 rating. Then Paquetá's right below that 7 rating, but everybody else is hovering somewhere around a 6.6 to 6.7 in terms of their rating, at least according to SofaScore. Where their goals, they're going to score goals from. Their open play goals is 38% of what they've done this season at 8. You've got 6 set pieces, 4 counterattack goals, and then they've got 2 penalties and 1 own goal. But the domination comes, they try to get you on the set pieces, and they try to get you in open play, which in your action zone on the screen as well, if you look at it, they pretty much set up where they have a lot of their touches come in that middle third at 43%, and then about 26% on the opposing third, and then 31% in the defense. So they are going to sit back a little bit more than they are going to be pressing up at and trying to create problems for us on our end of the pitch to try to generate those mistakes Dan mentioned. In terms of goals against, they've given up 23 from open play. So this is a situation where you feel like if the midfield can really do their job, if we can get those balls through the midfield, and we can, as Greg pointed out, some of those key players, including Douglas Luiz, who can have a game that we need him to have to kind of unlock things, we can definitely get at them through that midfield area. They've given up set pieces as well at 12. So we need to find a way through that. Set pieces haven't been great recently, and so that's definitely an opportunity for us to maybe grab a cheap goal off of a set piece. The other thing that's going to be interesting as well is they've given up 4 penalties, so it's 10% of their overall goals against. With a matchup, when you look at, say, Amari Hutchinson on the right hand side going down their left hand side, that young player in Scarles, who's played decently well, that's a kind of matchup where you hope that maybe we can exploit something there. We can maybe have Hutchinson try to box crash a little bit and try to wreak some havoc for him to maybe generate a penalty. I mean, any of those moments, set piece, penalties, things of that nature, you get 2 goals off of something like that, or at least 1, it really puts you in an advantageous position. It really starts to cause their heads to drop a little bit and make them feel, debilitate them a little bit in terms of their confidence. But in terms of where they're going to attack from, I mean, it's all about Jared Bowen really in the end. That's probably goes without saying. He's their primary weapon, and so he's going to be the one on the right-hand side. 44% of that on the right-hand side is where they're going to attack from, 33% on the other side with Somerville. And you've also got players like Walker Peters and Fernandez and so forth providing support to them. So overall, that's kind of where they're at, Greg. I definitely think there's enough opportunity for us to create within that middle of the pitch, and to try to create, as I've mentioned before, with other teams' stress points. And I think we have the quality to do it.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, that's a concise look at West Ham. We're going to take a short break. Back in a minute.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Everyone knows, I'm sure, about our good friend Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader. Check the bio out to this episode on how you can contact the Cheese Trader to get your cheesy order in. Just looking at my phone, and I think Sean Dyche is speaking to the press ahead of tomorrow's match. Just seeing a couple of bits coming out of that on Callum Hudson-Odoi. Sean Dyche says we'll have to wait and see because he didn't quite make the Aston Villa game. Couldn't make the bench. He's added it was just his Achilles. So we're going to have to wait and see on Callum Hudson-Odoi and whether he will make it. I mean, this is the proverbial 6-pointer. I was about to come into that, Dan. And Sean Dyche says it's an easy line to use. I've been in it so many years. I mean, I'm only just at the halfway point. So 3 is a lot more football to be played. So there is a lot more football to be played either way. It's very helpful to win this game, Sean Dyche says, quite obviously. So that's the challenge. Go and win away from home. Go and take on the challenge right in front of your eyes. I mean, that is the challenge, isn't it, Dan? To go to West Ham and win a game of football and come away, as I say, the proverbial 6-pointer, because if we win, we open up a 7-point gap to West Ham. If we lose, they close it to 1 point. So there you go. There's your proverbial 6 points on a plate. And I suppose it's now time to kind of bring up the Nuno factor, because Ola Aina's back and we think he'll play, and we'll get to our teams in a minute, and Matt Sells should be back in goal. So the same back five are there that Nuno knows very well. Elliot Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, no Woody, of course, but there's other players he knows as well. So how much is that going to be a factor in this? As a one-off game where he might say, you know what, whether I lose or not, I want to stick one up Marinakis.
It's going to be fascinating. I know that much. And to some extent, it's going to be, I don't know. I'll find it a difficult watch if we go and, absolutely stomp him and he stood there on the touchline looking a bit despondent, albeit I'll be happy about it. But there'll be an element of feeling bad for him. I mean, it's just a mess of a situation, really, from both sides. What's come out of it? I think looking at how he ended the game against Wolves, he doesn't look particularly happy at West Ham, does he? It's not like there's been enough sort of progress, and he's not got any new players in and things like that might just give him a bit of a spark. So, I mean, in that respect, we're playing him and them at a good time, because I think overall he's a good coach and he will get something more out of them. But at the minute, very much like he was when he came to us, isn't it? Up and down for them. So, I mean, how much does it matter that he knows some of our players, I suppose, is the other side of it, and, knows some of their strengths and weaknesses? It maybe helps them a bit. But there's always two sides of that, isn't there? There's knowing it, and then there's having the players on your team to do something about it and manage it. I don't get the impression he's the kind of guy who will, fire him up for a one-off game. That's not really how we sort of saw it for us. It was kind of like a gradual build of like a team unit over time. It wasn't so much that we were brilliant at certain games or not, but so I don't think it'll be that kind of performance from them, albeit they've got a few players that are a bit like that, and then like Paquetá can have a game where he's a bit wild and a game where he's loose cannon and stuff like that. So I guess, again, it's easy to say as a generic statement, but there'll be certain players who perhaps sense that and build on it. Be interesting to see how our players react to it, obviously, going against a guy who for some of them gave them their best season in a while, and got them into England squads and this, that and the other. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of react. But again, this is why it just all comes down to focus. It doesn't really come down to tactics and who's going to be exactly where. It's just going to come down to the focus of the players and whether or not they can handle that pressure of, like you're saying, proverbial 6-pointer and all that Dyche is saying. It doesn't really matter. It's an easy line, but I think the players feel it, because obviously that's why they're here and they're in the game, and they feel it as much as we do for the first period of the game. And then it depends what happens in those first 20-30 minutes of the game as to whether or not you can get over that feeling of the pressure because things have gone your way, or whether you succumb to it because things don't go your way. And we saw with West Ham, they conceded early on in that Wolves game and just collapsed. So it's there for us to do, regardless of how fired up Nuno is or the players are. If we take a chance early on, the chances are it unravels for them, and we can hopefully then just cruise off up the table for the rest of the season. Easy peasy.
I just saw in the Athletic on my phone that Callum Wilson looks like he wants out of West Ham after just 5 months. Patch references it as well, that he seems to be on his way out. Would you take him, he's asking? I mean, I'm not sure about that. I don't think he'd be the answer. I mean, having said that, he has got a good goal scoring record. I mean, he hasn't been injured, has he, this season at West Ham? From what I can remember, he's just not been getting game time.
4 goals for them, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure he fits the Dyche mold. And we're talking about big, strong Strand Larsen as the one that we possibly want. We'll get to that in just a moment or two. But first, let's look at what team we think. This is the Talking Reds team that we're putting up on the screen. I'll take you through it and then we can talk around it. So we're saying Matt Sells back in goal. Clearly, that needs to happen. John Victor, the crybaby, is still nursing his fake injury, I think. Ola Aina must start. He's back. He's got to continue to play. Nico Williams on the left. Of course, Murillo Milenkovic. That back four with the goalkeeper. That's the back five we had last season. Let's build on that. That can perhaps, maybe kickstart us getting back into some kind of form, some kind of solidity. We haven't had that team or that back five playing at all this season since Aina was injured on duty. I think his last game for Forest was that West Ham game in the 3-0 defeat at the City Ground. And obviously Sells did come off the bench the other day, but Aina had already departed the pitch by that point. So it'd be good to see those five back. That solid defensive unit for me has to be the key towards us climbing the table. We're saying Elliot Anderson in midfield, of course, and to bring in Douglas Luiz, that creativity, that guile on the ball, that difference from Dominguez for this to start, we're saying should be the way that Forest go. And then we're saying a front four of Morgan Gibbs-White in the 10 and Mari Hutchinson on the right. If fit, and I just referenced that Hudson-Odoi is touch and go, we would go with Callum in the left-hand side flank with an Igor Jesus up front. We're not sure if Cali Mwendo is still hovering around. We were surprised to see him the other day on the bench thinking he was going to be in Germany signing for Frankfurt. And as I said earlier, players do often become a lot better when they're not playing. They become the savior in everybody's eyes that we're in the shit, so we need someone. And I'm guilty of it myself. I'm already thinking, where's Dan Ndoye? We could do with Dan Ndoye coming back. And I couldn't wait to get rid of him out of the team just before this poor run because he hadn't been playing particularly well. But we have suffered with players being injured through the season. And when others are coming back, one or two are then going off, like Callum and Dan Ndoye, still missing Wood. Sangari, obviously, of AFCON, still no Ryan Yates, who, I've got to say it, I really feel that we're missing him. And so that's led me into talking about leaders, Richard Spray. Do we have enough leaders in this Forest team on the pitch when the game starts to turn, when we're up against it at West Ham and things aren't quite going our way? Do we have the leaders on the pitch as a first question? And can you make a case for anyone else that I've not mentioned to start this game? If Hudson-Odoi, for example, isn't fit, who takes that left-hand flank for you?
If he's not fit, I think Backwood feels like the most natural switch. Maybe you move Hutch over there and you put Backwood on the right to try to exploit things. Both can be effective against Scarles. And like I was mentioning earlier, maybe those are the matchups that you favor. But Backwood's obviously not been playing that much. He just got his first start. He was okay. He wasn't, fantastic, but he did have the assist in that last match to Morgan. So I would say you probably switch those two and you put Backwood on the right because I feel like that's more of a natural location for him. You could make the case maybe you try to move Morgan into that role and then maybe you play a flat three in the middle and you have Dominguez come in and play just to solidify that middle and try to make it difficult. And if you put him over on the left-hand side, he also adds to that ability to kind of reduce some of the effectiveness of their right-sided attack. So I think you could make the case for that. In terms of leadership, I think Morgan looked a lot more positive and a little bit more, I think, cheerleader-like in the last match at certain points, trying to get the guys things galvanized and playing with some positivity and some confidence. I would say Anderson's always, he's always talking throughout the match, trying to get people in the right position and all of that. And he does that even for England. But I would say you have an Aina, you have a Williams, you have Milenkovic. I think you have three guys there. Granted, they're all situated in that back line, but they're the kinds of players I think who can try to lift spirits and try to get people focused and doing their job the right way. Not to the same level I think Ryan Yates does it, not with the same sort of respect factor maybe that he can give you. But we have seen that people have called for Milenkovic to be a captain at certain points if Morgan wasn't on the pitch and Yates isn't on the pitch. I think you and I spoke the other day about Aina coming back, Greg, and just the fact that he provides that vibe. I didn't really see a whole lot of it in the last match. It looked like he was just kind of getting his feet under him, as it were, trying to get match fit and all that. But I do think that there are people who set an example for how to play the game the right way and try to get people playing, focused, as Dan referenced, that key term, focused. There are players in the pitch who I think you can do that. Maybe it's not as natural. Maybe we haven't seen it as often just because others have been available. But I would say, given the circumstances, it's probably not too shocking to see players like Milenkovic being more vocal, or someone like Aina being more vocal. And Williams has certainly set the standard, I think, in terms of his play to be that kind of leader.
What about you, Dan, and this team? Is there anything you want to make a case for in terms of a back three, perhaps? I'm not quite sure that any of us are thinking that, but is there any formation switch you'd make? Or, also Douglas Luiz, does he play? I mean, I think we're not far off the games that would activate the must buy, I think. So do we play him, or do we now phase him out in January because we're going to bring other players in? Where are you at, mate?
I think for this game, I would play Dominguez regardless of the appearance factor. I think for me, we need to see more from Elliot Anderson, but I think part of the reason we're not seeing that is because he's been asked to play the deep conductor role. He's been asked to drop in and get on the ball and play from deep. And I just think back to remember that Palace game last season where he played in the 10 and he was drifting past players. He was putting great balls in the box. I feel like we're sort of sabotaging ourselves a bit by asking him to play more like his England role. For us, we don't need that. We've got Dominguez who can do that role, right? So let's leave Dominguez back. Let's leave Dominguez to mop things up. And ultimately, you touched on it, their threat is the transition. So as long as we've got somebody back there, and for me, Dominguez will do that better than Luiz, and then let Elliot Anderson get closer to Morgan Gibbs-White and Callum Hudson-Odoi and Nico Williams on that side. And let's try and actually create something a little bit more of an overload rather than quickly get it out wide and bang a ball in the box. So for me, I think Dominguez, just to allow Elliot Anderson to play and not clash, and that's pretty much our team from last season. And aside from obviously Hutchinson coming in to replace Elanga and Jesus for Wood, and that for me would just give me a bit more confidence that the players that are going out there, familiar with each other, can set up to cut out some of these mistakes and all that sort of stuff that might decide the game.
I mean, with that in mind, we haven't got a graphic to change yet. I mean, an Anderson and I beg your pardon, a Dominguez in midfield with Gibbs-White moving out to the flank, Hutchinson, Gibbs-White on the flanks, and Anderson in the 10, moving up into the 10. That's what I'm trying to get to. Sorry, guys. So Anderson moving into the 10, Gibbs-White moving out to the right, Hutchinson moving out to the left, and then a Dominguez and a Douglas Luiz in the midfield feels like it could be a really good option as well. We've seen Gibbs-White play on the right away at Real Betis as well as other games as well. He's not alien to playing in that position if he's got support from Ola Aina as well. And pushing Elliot Anderson into the 10, I think he's our best player. He's our best player creatively. We know about all the stats for the passing. We know about all the ball recoveries. We know about all the duel wins. You referenced it there, Dan, his ability on the ball. He was called the Geordie Maradona for a reason, because he can carry the ball and he can glide. He's technically very, very gifted. So maybe that is part of the puzzle that needs to be put together, where he comes into that higher line. And if there is a space available, then Gibbs-White can fill in on the flank. I'm in favour of that, as much as I'm in favour that it doesn't kind of go quite to that, and it's Dylan Backward that comes in. He got a little bit of flack the other day, but let's remember the guy's been playing hardly any football. Everyone's expecting these guys to come into the team and make such big effects and big impressions all the time. We did see it with Amari Hutchinson when he was introduced in dribs and drabs, and then he really kind of caught fire against Leeds, wasn't it? And then other games subsequently. But he's gone off the ball a little bit. We've got to be patient with these young players. They're getting no game time, and then they're coming back in after injury. Dylan Backward has got promise. So if he plays, we have to get behind him. So we've got options, it would seem, in terms of who might start and so on. But one area, guys, that we're going to chat about now, let's just take that off as well, is the striker department. We just don't seem to be able to score goals. And it's been the case all season with no Chris Wood. It's been a huge problem, Dan. Strand Larsen's a player that I like. I think I've seen you on social media that indicates that maybe you quite like him as well. Maybe you'll tell me otherwise. If he comes available, what is the kind of money you'd be comfortable for us to pay for him? And is he the man that you would want to see them go after?
Yes, in simple terms, yes, go after him because he's got the Premier League experience. He's here for a season and a bit now. He's had a good record before he came here, and ultimately, from what I posted on social media, he fits the profile of a number 9 for a Premier League team that doesn't have a lot of the ball and that is going to, from time to time want to play long, but he's got a little bit more, obviously, movement and mobility about him than Chris Wood had. So for me, it comes down to, how much you want to pay. It comes down to whether or not you think he's going to keep you in the Premier League or not. And I guess this result could have a big impact on that, right? Because if we lose this game and all of a sudden we are 1 point outside the relegation zone with a long way to go, the idea of potentially spending 40 odd million pounds on Larsen, if you think he's the guy who can keep you in the Premier League, in the long run, pays back all day long because he's not suddenly going to be worth 0, is he, the next day anyway? So whatever happens, he's still going to be worth a reasonable amount of money, barring any, disastrous injuries. And he's the kind of guy who's at a good age where other teams will still pay a decent amount for him. So you're not paying 40 million. You're paying.
I think 40 million is probably the minimum you pay for him as a going rate anyway. In the market, it kind of is. Yeah,
like I say, it's Premier League tax, isn't it? The premium on that, all that stuff, and his age is, like I say, it's if you spend 40, the chances are you'll always get 20 back. So it's only really costing you 20, and spending 20 million to stay in the Premier League, which is worth 200 million. In the long run, it's not really a bad decision. Even as we've seen before, if you take a points deduction for breaching PSR and stuff, in the long run, it can still be the better strategy to take that risk. Look, he's a good fit. I would happily pay 35 to 40 million quid. I sort of think if at the end of the day, what we haven't seen from Jesus, he hasn't missed many chances. That's the bit I'm trying to get in my head. It's not like you can think of a highlight reel where he's missed a load of like one-on-one sitters, is it? So it's always that question.
He hasn't had that many big chances. That's the thing.
No. So is that because we're not creating it? Is he not got the movement for it and so on? And when you look at Strand Larsen, he played in a poor Wolves team and he still managed to get those tap-ins and be on the end of those crosses and things. So I think it's just a sensible choice. If you go for someone else abroad, younger, less experienced, you're just taking a massive gamble for me. And you still probably spend 20 million, 25.
Yeah, and I was going to come to this comment myself and suggest that Steve A might be onto something when he's asking about Forest not creating enough chances regardless who the centre forward is. And that comes down to style of play, Richard. If Dyche wants to put a load of crosses into the box, Strand Larsen is probably one of the ideal guys to get on the end of it. But as I've mentioned and you have and others have, we've got to mix our play up more with the players we've got in our side who are a lot better than just sitting in deep, really deep, and like soaking up pressure without laying a glove. It speaks to the coach again, doesn't it? It speaks to Dyche and his team. Where are we? Let me ask again. I want to zoom out slightly. If Forest don't get a result here, what does that say about where this team actually is right now compared to where we thought they were 6 weeks ago? Because 6 weeks ago, Sean Dyche was second coming. And now, of course, is in longer and we've lost more games and the tactics are being decried. Which one is it? Is he is he the guy that we need to get us out of the shit, or actually have we put ourselves in it even further?
I guess it depends. I guess depends on what you're saying in terms of getting us out the shit. I mean, maybe you're meaning just in that general area of the table.
Yeah, at the relegation zone.
I don't know if he's the kind of manager. Now, what I think we mentioned the other day, and what concerned me a little bit about that 52, 53 crosses, which at some point we just got to move on from that, right? I just think that it speaks to a certain stubbornness. If it was him that was drilling that into them because he thought for some reason he could exploit these guys who you're just playing right into their strength. I don't know why he would consider that, but what I hope is that there is a little bit of adaptation here. There is an ability to see that you've got some good quality players, especially on the wide areas, and you've got players who can take other players on directly and they can create space for themselves, and then you can see players trying to make some runs or try to find areas to try to get behind or just little pockets of space as you lead into that 18-yard box. Because that is one of the things that have bothered me a little bit, is that you've seen a ball coming from outside the 18-yard box through ball to Jesus from Morgan to create a goal off of the foot of Hutchinson when he crossed it into him. But you haven't seen a lot of ability to kind of take that possession to another level, which we're not trying to just be Man City 2.0, right? We're just trying to try and find ways of, as I said, striking a balance between that sort of compact and sort of high pressing approach to then subsequently trying to create meaningful possession. I think he possesses the ability to do that because we have also seen him do that in other matches. I just think at times it's like once he sets a plan in motion, it's like he doesn't want to deviate from it in game. It's like, I'm just going to keep sticking with it, and hope that somehow it'll unfold and it'll work at certain points if I just add this ingredient or that ingredient just to slightly tweak things, which isn't a crazy approach, I guess. But I would definitely think that he is the kind of manager, I think, just in terms of how he does man management. Thus far, it seems like the players have reacted to him. I think Yates brought up just a different culture and vibe that had generated from him coming in away from Ange. Now, granted, Ange is a completely opposite end of the spectrum, right, in all aspects in terms of how he sets up and how he is as an individual. So is he the kind of individual personality that can do that? Yeah. I mean, he brought a psychiatrist or psychologist in to talk to the players to try to help them through this sort of all of this turmoil. I do believe so. I think he's a heady guy who wants to let his players know that he supports them and he wants to see them be the best version of themselves. And so do I think he can get us out of it? Yeah. Is it going to be like a significant rise up the table? Maybe not. Maybe you can get some favorable results like this one and others, as well as maybe see Leeds start to drop points a little bit. And then maybe you can start to move up to that 14, 15 spot. Is it the ideal considering we were last season? No, of course not, because it's a significant step backwards. But I think it was one that we all kind of anticipated was going to happen, just given the sheer number of matches we had to play and with the new experience in Europe. So I do think he's a guy to kind of keep us in the at least in the Premier League, to Dan's point about the revenue value of that. But I don't think he's necessarily one at this stage to get you to those heights of like mid to up above mid-table, at least not right now, at least not the way that we're playing in these last 4 matches.
I mean, we've had the Nuno situation, the Ange Postecoglou situation, which we've spoken about endlessly. So when Sean Dyche comes into the club, we've had a lot of change, we've had a lot of upheaval. And so we were also sitting in firmly in the bottom 3 at that point. We are 4 points outside the bottom 3 now, so there has been an improvement there. So the last 4 games that become a concern, and some of the performances, I think, if the performances had all been like Man City, maybe the gas wouldn't have been quite as heavy on him. But when you perform the way you did at Villa and Fulham and Everton at home, was just like knocking your head against a brick wall, becomes really frustrating. Is he the guy to save us from relegation? I think so. I don't think that we should expect, like you say, Richard, anything dazzling this season. And it remains to be seen as to whether or not he's still here after the summer. Just quickly on Strand Larsen, Richard, I want literally just a figure. What's the figure you'd be comfortable paying for Strand Larsen? All I want is a figure.
Yeah, I like that 35 million. I think that's the right in a range that Dan mentioned. I think is the right price point for him.
So if Wolves want 50, you're balking at that.
I just don't think we can do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Depends where we are in the league at the end of January.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the other
true.
thing to consider is if we lose tomorrow against West Ham and they go hard after Strand Larsen because they might be in for him.
They just got 2 strikers, 2 new ones. I doubt they're going to do that.
That's true. They did just buy someone. So we'll see on that front. And how much change is too much change, Danscape? If we lose this one and then I think we play Arsenal in the Premier League next, where you'd expect that to be a defeat as well. That could go to 6 in a row. Do you think realistically that we see our 4th manager of the season coming to the City Ground?
I think we'll already be making plans for that. If it comes to that, I'm sure there'll be some thinking about, is there any other option if we end up in like say the end of January, if we are really still in the bottom 3 or just like a point or 2 outside it, maybe that thinking's there. It's not unrealistic, is it, for this club and the way we go about things? Like I said before, it comes down to whether or not internally there's a feeling that he's doing the right things and that he's on board with the players, and that gradually we'll get there and we'll get just enough wins. You know, we don't need to win every game. We just need, obviously, enough wins to feel comfortable. So it comes down to that. Like I say, you can't judge it just on this game, but it will feel like this is a massive, you know, blow to kind of the progress he's made. It kind of wipes out the good feeling from beating Liverpool and beating Spurs and that stuff, doesn't it? If you can't back that up by beating someone like Wolves that are in a bad place themselves.
I mean, we went to Wolves, got the win, and that was a must-win game, I think. And I think going to West Ham is the same kind of thing. Where I think we have to go to West Ham, we have to get the win, whether it's messy or whatever it turns out to be. The 3 points is the most important thing. I'm going to come to you guys for score predictions in just a moment. Everyone that's with us in the chat, please do go ahead and hit the like button on this video. It would be really lovely if you would, as well as subscribing if you haven't done already. You can follow us on social media across the usual places, and we'd love some more reviews on Apple and Spotify if you'd be so kind. Coming up in the new year, we're going to be doing more episodes of The One With. Steph is going to be coming to join us at some point. I'm going to reach out to Steph and get her diary aligned with ours, and we'll set that up when we can. And so, yeah, please keep a lookout for more reviews and previews, as well as in this January, we're going to do we'll take a look at the targets and the signings as and when they happen. We are expecting things to liven up, but we are still early in January, of course, and still a long way to go in the window. All right, that's the end of this episode. Danscape, time for you to give us your score prediction.
I'll play it safe and just say 1-0 Forest. Pretty tight, cagey affair. Maybe we need our Ollie Watkins moment, don't we? We need someone to just smash a shot in from the edge of the area, or a goalkeeper to make a mistake, something like that. And 1-0, move past it, and have a little bit more comfort in that, in the table.
Okay, Richard Spray.
Oh, he's not had a clean sheet in 26 matches apparently with Nuno, so I get the impression we'll definitely have our chances. I'm going to go for a 2-0. I think it's going to be a very difficult game. It's not going to be pretty, but I think, somehow, some way we find a goal, and then we get ourselves a penalty or something to that effect, and get ourselves a cheaper goal out of it and put ourselves 2-0. In the end. So that's what I'm hoping for. Bringing Sells back in wouldn't it be the most poetic thing for him to come back in and him get a clean sheet after being, falling out of favor, it seems, for a few matches, and coming back in and really showing what kind of quality he has and getting back to the player he was last year. So yeah, 2-0 Forest.
Okay, well, I'm a big believer in sometimes things do align, and I was at the West Ham Forest match at the City Ground earlier in the season when we lost 3-0, and that was the last game for Nuno as Forest manager. And I will be at the London Stadium for this one as well. I'll be at the reverse pick fixture, and I'm saying the scoreline again will be 3-0, but this time to Nottingham Forest, and this will be Nuno Espirito Santo's last game in charge of West Ham. So we are looking at a full circle moment. We are looking at a 3-0 scoreline, which has been a good scoreline for us with the Liverpool and the Spurs game to consider as well. But certainly it's a chance for Forest to, get one back up on West Ham and Nuno. I certainly won't be feeling glum if he stood at the sideline looking down and looking glum and looking like he wants the world to open up and all the rest of it. So, Dan, I know you got a little bit of a soft spot still for Nuno, but he's their manager now, and I just hope we smash them into the ground and come away with 3 goals and 3 points. So if you see me at the London Stadium, please come over and say hi. I'll be meeting up with Raf, the random pundit, for that one. In the meantime, we'll be back to review the game on Wednesday, I think. So keep your ears and eyes peeled on social media for that. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.